TCU needs to hold on to these three players to win the spring transfer portal window. I'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. If you watch the show on the regular or listen to it, that's a new intro. Thank you to the Locked On team for putting together a really new, cool production. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're really close to 1,100 subscribers. You can also subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts and audio variety. Spring portal window opens today. So that means players can once again enter the transfer portal. Basically, we're at a free agency world now in college sports. So you sort of have to worry and wonder about everyone at all times. Coaches are constantly trying to add talent to their rosters, right? And they're also trying to re-recruit players that they already have on campus. And so today I want to talk about who does TCU need to keep in this portal window. I think they'll add a few players in this next opportunity to do that. And we know that they're going after a couple offensive linemen from SMU right now. Marcus Bryant, the tackle from the Ponies, also Branson Hickman, who played center for SMU the past few seasons. And there will be more names that hit the portal over the next few weeks. Will they go after a running back to add to what they have with Cam Cook and Trey Sanders and Trent Battle? Will they add somebody else on the offensive line to go along with a position group that they've already reworked? Could we see some more help on the interior defensive line potentially? Even though it seems like that's a position group that they're at least comfortable with what they have and want to see forward throughout the rest of the year. But TCU is very active in that first window. So I don't think we're going to see a ton of moving and shaking in this next upcoming situation unless you have some big roster turnover for whatever reason. So the parameters for this, it's not necessarily you need to keep these people because X is such a big position of need. There were a couple things I factored in. One was, who have we heard about? Who has been in some back channel chatter that something might be going on? Who are some players that other schools might be interested in? And then who would have the best opportunity to move on and go somewhere else? Because the wild thing about the portal now is, and we see it especially in basketball, because there's so few players. And I was talking to somebody who works in the NIL world at another Big 12 school a few months ago. And he was like, honestly, football is so lucrative, but one position, or I guess one role on a team that has really benefited from the portal windows and just the new world that we live in, are like role players on college basketball teams, because they know they're needed to fill out a roster to build around your star players. And they can always go in the portal and kind of just see what the market's like, see what people would give them, see what opportunities they have outside of the school they're currently at. So which three players does TCU have to keep in order to win this spring portal window? Because I don't think this is going to be a roster that's adding a ton of players. I think it's going to be more about retention than addition in this situation. So first, I'll say Savion Williams. The receiver room, I really like how it's come together. Now, we said that last year. We had questions about, is anybody going to emerge as kind of the alpha, as the go-to player? How important is that? I don't know, but I think overall the receiving core, along with a lot of other aspects of the team, were disappointing. And some of the reasons for that, you had guys that were in out of practice due to injuries and other situations, and so it was hard to build rapport with a new quarterback. Then the quarterback changed mid-season, and that threw a wrench in everything as well. This upcoming year, you add Eric McAllister from Boise State. J.B. Richardson, your leading receiver from a yardage standpoint, is coming back. You have some other great pieces on the inside like JoJo Earl, Jordan Bailey, Major Everhart. Some intriguing guys on the outside, Dalen Wright, Braylon James, who just transferred in from Notre Dame. Jack Besh, how are they going to use him as a wide receiver, tight end, H-back hybrid type of player? He's apparently been a mismatch nightmare in camp, just making plays on the defense over and over again. But the guy that I think, mainly because of the interest it seems like he's getting from other teams, Savion Williams, I feel like, is primed for a big-time year. He had a really good year 2 seasons ago as kind of the complementary piece alongside Quentin Johnston. We were hopeful that this past year would be his breakout season. That didn't totally come to fruition, but I think as the year went on, Savion got more comfortable, and it seemed like he benefited the most from Josh Hoover taking over as QB. Josh seemed to trust him. He had a huge game against Texas. And if you remember after that Texas game, I believe it was Jeff Ketchum from Orange Bloods, who just made a point about how good Savion was against that Texas team and that could mean something. He's got that prototypical wide receiver type of build. And I said this last week. I was like, because somebody asked me who could hit the portal potentially, who should we be worried about? And I said, well, I don't want to throw out a ton of names, but I think position-wise, wide receivers typically an area where you're going to see some attrition because there's just so many guys in the room. There's only so many snaps, so many pass attempts, even though I think there will be a lot this upcoming season for TCU. But Savion Williams, I think, is going to be a huge part of this offense this year. And while, yes, you feel like you have depth at that receiver position, I think we saw last year that felt like a really deep receiver room, and then a couple injuries happened, and suddenly it didn't seem like anyone could get open. Savion's ability, hopefully this upcoming year, to stretch the field, win 50-50 balls, make things happen after the catch. He ran with an anger streak last year. I really liked when they would get him involved in those wide receiver screens. One as a blocker, just because his physicality really stood out, and he had that ability to stay on his block and spring big plays for his teammates, but also as somebody who could just catch the ball and run through a few tackles and turn what was probably a 2 or 3 yard gain into 6 or 7 because he kept his feet churning and he was so big, and that frame allowed him to keep moving forward and that momentum to pile up and make things difficult for the defenders to bring him down. So Savion, in my mind, one of those top priorities. You need him here. I think he's got good chemistry with Josh Hoover. I feel like he's ready, especially alongside a guy like Eric McAllister, because another part of this is when you add talented wide receivers to the mix, the gravity of that defense has to go somewhere. So somebody's going to get favorable matchups in this offense. And I think Savion is one of those players that can really make plays in one-on-one situations. Turning to the defensive side of the ball, another guy you want to hold on to, Dominic Williams in the middle. And that nose guard, nose tackle DT position. Now, I thought Dominic's freshman year was super impressive. Last year was a lot quieter. Weren't nearly as many splash plays. But TCU needs to be formidable against the run this year. I'm hopeful that with a new defense, we've talked about the opportunities it's going to open up for edge rushers, right? Guys that can get after the quarterback, creating one-on-one matchups for those players to wreak havoc, to make things happen. But I think Dominic is a huge key, along with the other interior defensive linemen, making things happen, keeping gap integrity, tackles for loss, pressuring the QB from the interior. You need his presence on the inside to sort of set the tone for this defense. And yes, we're talking about a position group that rotates in and out a lot. And so you hope that the change in defensive philosophy, change in coordinators, all that will be beneficial for Dom, and that he is bought in and ready to rock. But he's another one of those players that I just think teams are going to be interested in because he is so good. And I don't know how much or if any communication is happening behind the scenes, but just the idea of, man, I could hit the portal and really see what, the market looks like. Dominic is one of those guys in my eyes that could do that because of his talent, because of what he's done in his first 2 seasons at TCU. And just the way he's made things happen from one of those places on the field where if you can get pressure from the interior, if you can blow up plays immediately as a defensive lineman, especially when you're talking about, playing head up on the center or on the guard, that is the quickest way to just shut things down and stop an offense in their tracks. And finally, I didn't really consider it certainly can happen. And it's happened before, but players that have transferred in this year, I don't see them, or this offseason already, I don't see them hitting the portal again. So that's why, offensive line is a big position of need. I think that group's got to come together. But because a lot of the impact players can be transfers, I feel like you're good there. At the QB position, I think you're set. Like, I know some people have concerns about the quarterback room, but I think you got a legitimate starter in Josh Hoover. You got an experienced backup in Seals, and then the next guy up in Haas Haney, presumably the future of the program moving forward. And I'm not sure he's going to be super worried about, snaps this upcoming year. Defensively, I like where they are with these edge rushers. I think these guys can be excited about playing in a new defense. There's some players like Abe Kamara who I think are really set for this defense, and his ability to play like in the secondary and also come downhill and make things happen in line of scrimmage is going to be really beneficial for him with Andy Avalos pulling the strings and calling the plays. So the last guy that I thought about was a leading tackler for the team last season, Nnamdi Obiazor. His physicality, the way he set the tone last year was a huge deal. And he was one of the bright spots on a defense that struggled, especially at that position where we had some high expectations because of the experience they had coming back. And transitioning to a new position, he ended up being the man to make it happen. I like his ability. I like his athleticism, even with guys like Caleb Alarmzor coming in, Johnny Hodges coming back. I think Nnamdi is going to be a huge part of what they're doing defensively. And again, a kind of cornerstone piece of this defense. Need him to be there for this upcoming season. So those are the three players in my mind that TCU has to hold on to in this spring portal window. And this is, before everybody freaks out, this is not me saying any of these guys are on the move or rumored to be on the move. This is just, we now live in a world in college football where everybody is a free agent all the time, or they have the ability to be at least. And so those are the guys that it's like, you're going to see some names. You're going to see some attrition this offseason. I haven't seen any names yet. I'm not sure if the guys will wait till the end of spring practice, which is April 27th. But we have a window now where some players are going to hit the portal. I think there's going to be some players from TCU that do that because you've got to change over in the defensive philosophy. And there's just always some guys that are asked to move on. There's always some players that kind of look at the writing on the wall and say, you know what, this is not going to be a good fit for me. But those are the three guys, Savion Williams, Dominic Williams, and then Nnamdi Obiazor, that I think TCU has to be just very aware. We got to make sure that we keep these players and that they are a huge part of what we're doing this upcoming season. When we come back, TCU basketball, speaking of the transfer portal, they added a player. We'll talk about the newest frog for Jamie Dixon's squad. That's Lockdown Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. Well, perfect transition because we're talking about adding talent, right? And that's a big part of college athletics. It's also what LinkedIn helps you do. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Hiring for your small business. It can feel like a high-stakes wager. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the right role. That's why you should check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses agree you need to use LinkedIn for hiring. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free at LinkedIn today. So TCU had a couple players on campus, according to Jamie Plunkett. Frankie Collins from Arizona State was visiting this past weekend. Also Noah Reynolds from Green Bay. Really excited about the potential of Noah Reynolds, a really good shooter, somebody who could stretch the floor. And they got a commitment. So they already had a commitment from C.J. Walker, the forward from UCF, 6'8" player, really athletic, good defender, averaged about 8 points a game for the Knights this past season. Frankie Collins from Arizona State. He is committed to play basketball at TCU. It'll be his third school. He started his career at Michigan, spent the last 2 seasons at Arizona State. This past year, pretty good score, averaged about 14 points a game, 13.8 in 2022. The year before, he averaged 9.7 points per game. Now, Frankie, it seems like at his best, you look at the assist numbers, 4.3 assists in 2022. That went down last season at 3.2. Not a lockdown or a knockdown shooter per se, at least from a numbers perspective. From the three-point line, he shot 31% this past year, 42% field goal percentage, 57% from the line. So, man, it just the interesting free throw numbers continue. But I think here's what you're getting with Frankie Collins. You're getting a guy that plays defense, can get to the rim and score points, was a lead scorer for Arizona State this past season. I think in an ideal world, what you'd be asking Frankie Collins to do is run your offense, get your offense into their sets, run it well, be a true point guard, get downhill and score, play good defense, and distribute to, the main players on your team. So you're getting experience at the guard position, always a plus, and a true real deal point guard, which you had to have that to replace the production that you're losing from this previous season. Noah Reynolds last year had 20 points a game for Green Bay. He shot 51% from the field and 34% from three. Back in 2021, he shot 41% from three. So Noah is more of a stretch the floor, fill it up type of scorer. If you end up with those two guys in the backcourt and some young players like Isaiah Manning and Jace Posey won the high jump at recent TCU track and field meet. Saw that over the weekend. 2-sport athlete. Really big hops. Isaiah Manning pulled like a prank on April Fools about potentially entering the transfer portal. He's not really in the transfer portal. But he also showed some clips from practice where, he was getting after it against the guys that were playing this past season and doing a great job. So it was fun to see that. I think if Frankie Collins and Noah Reynolds has not committed, Frankie Collins has. If those guys end up being your kind of 1-2 punch in the backcourt, along with some of the athleticism you have running the floor in the front court, that's going to be a good combination. So I like the addition of Frankie Collins. He joins C.J. Walker as someone who is committed to TCU in the transfer portal. Another huge part of the offseason, in my mind, for TCU basketball, got to get Ernest Udeh more consistent, and he needs to have more in the bag on offense, right? Like, I get it, good rim runner, great athlete. I think this past year you saw his prowess on defense as well as a rim protector. Did some really good things. As a young big man, I think he showed a lot of promise. One big deal is keeping him on the floor. He just can't consistently get into foul trouble like he did this previous season. But the other thing is, if he can add some sort of post-up game or just some ability as a threat, as more than just guy that can roll to the rim on the pick and roll and finish, then that's a huge boost for this team. But TCU lands Frankie Collins from Arizona State out of the transfer portal. I also had Noah Reynolds come in and visit the guard from Green Bay. So they're getting after it, trying to add some talent there. Jamie Dixon getting his team ready for this upcoming season. Like what they're doing so far. They'll continue to add some talent to that current roster as the year goes on. When we come back, TCU baseball. Was this just a one-off series win or an encouraging sign for the future? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel, it's the best place for you to try to make money. You love sports. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, you're into it. Why not just try to get some cash as well? It's playoff time in the NBA, NHL, and baseball's in full swing. FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. New customers, $150 in bonus bets. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs and slam dunks. It's all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Well, the weekend didn't start out perfect for TCU baseball. They ended up dropping the game to Texas Tech on Friday, but they ended up winning the series. They turned things around on Saturday and Sunday, and TCU now 22-12 overall, 7-11 in conference play. But I think most importantly, get a series win against a good Red Raider team by getting victories on Saturday and Sunday. Won those games by a score of 4-2 and 4-3. So the question is now, is this the start of turning your season around, or was this just a one-off good weekend for TCU baseball? Here are the positives. Here are the things that I liked from this weekend. You still only scored 9 runs in 3 games. That's not great. But in situational hitting situations, wasn't the best way to phrase that, they executed better when it came to situational hitting. They had a squeeze play on Saturday that scored a run, some clutch hits on Sunday that brought in a few runs. Luke Boyers with a 3-run home run with two outs. I can't remember who had it, but it was a single that brought in Fisher Ingersoll for that 4th run to give TCU a lead after Tech kind of slowly tied that game 3-3. Other encouraging signs, bullpen, Ben Abelt had a good outing on, I think it was Saturday that he pitched for a while. Cole Klecker came in and closed the game out on Saturday. Cademan Parker came out and closed the game out on Sunday after Tech got runners on first and second with nobody out. He was able to get a couple flyouts and a K to win that ball game. So that was good, right? Luis Rodriguez had a really good start on Saturday. Mason Bixby, who's been coming out of the bullpen occasionally for the Frogs, he actually got the start on Sunday, and he did okay. I mean, he ended up giving up some runs, and after getting a 3-0 lead in the first inning, he did eventually allow Tech to tie that thing up. But he did a nice job, and he's got electric stuff. I mean, that fastball is running at 98 to 100 miles an hour. So he's a special talent. I like the idea. I don't know if this is going to be the way they do it moving forward, but I like the idea of him being kind of in an opener role. You don't want him going through the lineup multiple times right now because I think he's still working on putting together that, full pitch sequence, but that fastball can get after hitters. And if he can confuse the lineup for a few innings and then you pass it over to somebody like Ben Hampton, that worked out really well on Sunday. Now, overall, they are still just not hitting. I mean, they're just not hitting well, right? Like, they scratched out enough hits and enough runs to get it done over the weekend. There's still not a lot of pop. I'm wondering if I assume where we're at with the Peyton Tolle situation is he's done much better as a Friday night starter, and that's it. And so they've kind of taken him out of the lineup outside of Tuesdays. But I just think the risk reward here, I mean, I know he really struggled at the plate early in the season, but we're just sort of at the point where you need some sort of pop at the dish. And so maybe adding him to the lineup on a more regular basis could give you that, even if it means he's not going to hit for a huge average and strike out a lot like he did early in the season. I'll give them credit, kind of backs against the wall at home. They got it done. They go to Austin to play Texas this weekend, so another good opportunity for some RPI positive wins. There's just no room for error. I mean, you won 2 out of 3. You're still 4 games under 500 in the Big 12. You're going to have to, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to pull off a sweep at some point, and you're now in the harder part of the schedule in the back half. Series against Texas, Baylor, West Virginia, and Kansas State, some of the best teams in the league. Baylor has surprisingly been good. They're over 500 after sweeping BYU over the weekend. But I think the good news about the Big 12 is Texas ended up coming back and winning 2 out of 3 against Houston, but they struggled. Week to week, they dropped 2 out of 3 to BYU. BYU goes and gets swept by Baylor. It's just a car crash every week. Like, you never know who's going to beat who. There are opportunities to win games. TCU just has to start stringing wins together to make this work. We'll talk about that and more all this week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team, and we do it here every day. Thank you. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.